Intel Panther Lake is finally here, and I've been doing a bunch of testing for the past few weeks. What you're seeing on screen right now is the Intel Core Ultra X9 388H with the new Arc B390 iGPU. I've got Cyberpunk 2077 running at 1600p, and if you take a look at that frame rate, you can see we're well over 100 FPS on integrated graphics. Pretty amazing if you ask me. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's etaprime back here again. In this video, we finally get to test out Intel's Panther Lake CPU. So this is their new mobile lineup, Intel Core Ultra 300, otherwise known as Panther Lake. What I've got here is the Intel Core Ultra X9 388H and a reference Lenovo laptop. Before we get started here, I do want to mention that this video is sponsored by Intel, but they're not going to be reviewing the content before it goes live. They don't know exactly what I'm going to say about this. But if you watch my channel, you know I've been really excited about these chips for quite some time now. I've been able to see them in action, but now I can show you exactly what these can do. And I do think that this is a big upgrade from their Core Ultra 200 series, especially on the iGPU side. So this video is not a review of this laptop. Again, it's kind of a reference Lenovo laptop just to give me access to that new Core Ultra X9 388H. And I definitely want to go over the specs of this new CPU because Intel has upgraded quite a lot when it comes to Core Ultra 300. So like I mentioned, the chip I have here is the Intel Core Ultra X9 388H. I've also got the X7 that we'll be taking a look at in another video, so stay tuned to the channel. But these are based on Intel's new 18A architecture, and there's a lot that goes into this, like their ribbon FET tech and their rear power delivery, known as PowerVia, is pretty cutting edge tech. But with the 388H, we've got 16 cores, 16 threads, and it's configured in a way where we have 4 performance cores that'll clock up to 5.1 gigahertz, 8 efficiency cores that'll do up to 3.8, and 4 low power efficiency cores that'll do up to 3.7. This chipset can be paired with 96 gigs of RAM running at 9600 megatransfers per second. But one of my favorite things here is their new iGPU. It's known as the Intel Arc B390. It'll clock up to 2.5 gigahertz. We've got 12 Xe3 cores, 12 ray tracing units, 96 XMX engines, and 96 vector engines. With the system that has 96 gigs of RAM paired with it, you can dedicate up to 91 gigabytes to VRAM for this B390. So, AI workloads, you have plenty of RAM over there. But since they brought Xe3 over to the iGPU market with their new Panther Lake chips, we also get some new technologies like XeSS3, which supports their XeSS super resolution, XeSS multi-frame generation, and Xe low latency. By the end of the video, we're going to test a lot of this out, but I will have more videos coming. I do want to test at different TDPs. We're also going to test a bunch of games in those videos. So again, keep an eye on the channel because I've got a lot of videos coming up with Panther Lake. Jumping in here so I can give you a better look at everything. As you can see, we've got the Intel Core Ultra X9 388H, 16 cores, 16 threads, 32 gigs of system memory here, and this is going to be shared with that new iGPU, but it's super fast, running at 9600 megatransfers per second. We've also got the Intel NPU if we want to offload some AI workloads over there. But I'd say the main claim to fame here is the new Intel Arc B390 iGPU. And right now, the shared GPU memory is up to 18 gigabytes. But from the new Intel graphics software, we can actually change this if you wanted to. I'm going to leave it just like it is. But the other new thing we have here with this Xe3 iGPU is XeSS multi-frame generation. Now, this is an override for applications or games that support frame gen in the first place. 2x, 3x, up to 4x. So we've got multi-frame gen on Intel Arc now, and we'll take a closer look at that in just a bit. Really impressed with what this thing can do just for everyday tasks. I've run a bunch of benchmarks on this machine here, and we've got that Lenovo. It's kind of a reference laptop, but I did want to show you the power profiles we've got. So we've got an adaptive power mode, battery saver, performance, and geek performance, which is going to put us all out. So along with CPU performance and GPU performance being upped with Panther Lake, we've also got a significant gain in AI performance or AI workload performance, especially because we've got that more powerful iGPU, the B390. Of course, the NPU can still be utilized, Personally, I like using Intel's AI Playground. This is pretty awesome and it's a little overlooked. I've talked about it in a couple other videos. But basically, it's like a one-click install. We've got our chat, image generation. They also added video generation. If we go to image gen settings, what this really is kind of a container for Comfy UI. So it'll automatically install that for us. And through here, if I was to choose, let's say, HD image, and we go back, it'll tell us exactly what models we need, and we can download them from here. I've already got the draft image set up, so we'll go ahead and generate something here real quick. And I've got my task manager up so we can see exactly what's going to be going on here. So we'll just do a beautiful sunset over a mountain. It's going to load that into memory. It does it really quick. Compared to something like the B580, I think with these smaller image generations, these are only 512 by 512. It's pretty much on par with that, which is pretty crazy for an iGPU. But these do come out really nice. We've also got video generation. So you can do LTX video, WAN, or WAN, however you pronounce it. Okay, so I just unloaded my memory here by restarting the application, and I wanted to take a look at the chat section. So if we go to chat settings, there's several different options that we can choose. We can do some NPU chat, basic chat, reasoning. I'm going to go with basic chat. I've already downloaded this, and our backend is Llama. Looks like a low RAM usage version of Quinn 3. We'll just ask it, how is a GPU made? It's going to load that model into memory, and there we have it. So it's pretty quick, and we're using the GPU. You can see it's pegged this out almost to 100% here with that B390. But there's so many options that you can use with AI Playground. So I would definitely suggest checking this out. Again, I've showed it off in a couple of my videos. Something I personally do like using because Comfy UI installed on Intel Arc can be a pain, but it's really like a one-click setup with AI Playground. So the next thing I wanted to take a look at were some benchmarks. Then we're going to move over to my favorite part of these videos, gaming. And that's where this thing really shines, in my opinion, for an iGPU. This thing is putting down some amazing performance. The first one we have is just to kind of get a baseline with this chip, Geekbench 6. Single core coming in with a 3018, multi 17796. Not bad at all, and with that multi, I mean, it's still looking really good here for a mobile CPU, but you got to keep in mind, we've only got 16 cores and 16 threads. We don't have those extra threads like some of the other chips out there do. Little over 3,000 on single, looking really good. I also ran Cinebench R24, and for our multi-core score on that X9 388H, we're right there at 1,345. So it is getting beat out by that M1 Ultra and the Xeon 3265. But again, multi-core, only 16 cores, 16 threads. But moving over to single-core performance here, up to 130, beating everything else out on the list here. I also ran a quick 7-zip benchmark, single and multi-threaded, and I faced the X9 388H off against the 285H, which was last gen Core Ultra, and the AMD Ryzen 9 365. You can see single thread, the X9 came way ahead, and even multi-thread performance here is beating out that Ryzen 9 365, which just happens to have 10 cores and 20 threads. I also wanted to test some stuff for creators and office productivity. For the Puget benchmark, up top, we've got that X9 388H, beating out the Ryzen 9 365, and of course the 385H. I also ran the Procyon office productivity benchmark, and to my surprise, the Core Ultra 285H actually beat out the new X9 388H. I ran it a couple times and it seemed to be the case, but you can see that both of the Core Ultra chips are beating out that Ryzen 9 365. Geekbench AI for OpenVINO GPU performance with that new B390. And this is going to lead us into some more GPU benchmarks and gaming. But when it comes to the Geekbench AI benchmark, you can see that the Ryzen chip is using Onyx there. So with that X9 388H, through all three tests here, came ahead of both of these chips. And the final benchmark I have here is 3D Mark Time Spy. Remember, we're in geek performance with the Lenovo laptop, so our TDP is quite high. But you can see with this new Intel Arc B390 iGPU, we had a total score of 7,865. Beats out anything Intel's ever made. And like I mentioned, I will have more videos. I do want to face this off against some other very popular APUs out there that we use quite often on the channel for their iGPUs. But so far, I mean, with this synthetic benchmark, it is looking really amazing. But this is a synthetic benchmark, and now it's time to jump into some real-world gaming with the Intel Arc B390. Starting out here with one of my favorite games to test on iGPUs, we've got Forza Horizon 5, and usually when testing this on an iGPU, we're sitting at like 1080p. Since I'm using my game capture, I gotta go 16:9. We're at high settings, but instead of 1080 or 1200, we're running this game at 1440p on integrated graphics with no scaling, so we don't have XeSS or anything else on. This is native 1440p high settings for this game. Now you can see up in the top left-hand corner, I've got Afterburner running. This does peg out at up to around 55 watts every once in a while. It's not crazy, and we're not thermal throttling with this setup here. Again, it's not a review on the laptop itself. Different laptops will have different power profiles. But this is kind of right there where a lot of the laptops with this 388H would definitely be able to reach. The next game I wanted to test here was Red Dead 2, and we're not at 1440p, we're actually at 1080 with this one, but we've got a high ultra mix. Using the slider bar with those settings is a bit confusing, so I just call it high ultra. No scaling, so it's true 1080 here. Pulling a little more wattage than we were with Forza Horizon 5, and we've got a lower resolution because this is just a harder one to run, but we're well over that 60 mark. In fact, by the end of my run here, I had an average of 78 FPS on the Arc B390. I also wanted to test out Spider-Man 2 in this video because this one's a bit hit or miss on different integrated graphics, but it looks like that Arc B390 is handling it just fine at high with XeSS set to quality. Every once in a while, it does dip down to around 63 FPS, but if I didn't have that frame counter on, I'd never notice it. On average, we're seeing around 74 FPS out of it. Now I wanted to test out Cyberpunk 2077, and we're going to go about this a few different ways. Right now, I'm at high settings, and we'll get in there. I'll show you exactly what I've got because some people might not believe me just seeing how well this runs. I'm not using frame gen right now, but we do have XeSS because with the high preset, it does enable it. It's only set to quality right now. So I'll show you. We'll go into settings here, and from our graphics, we're at high. So we've got that high preset right here. XeSS 2.0 to quality. Frame generation is completely off. But this is something I want to test out in just a bit because with this new Intel Core series, we've got XeSS multi-frame gen that we can use. Of course, with this, the way it is right now, we're at 1080. I'm connected to my game capture. So we're seeing averages in the high 70s with Cyberpunk 2077 on this iGPU. Our wattage does peg out sometimes up to around 68 watts. You take a look at Afterburner, and again, I will have full videos on low TDP testing, but I wanted to see exactly what we could do with this, and I've been very, very impressed. So this game's fully playable like it is right now. I mean, you can have a really good time with it. Get a couple explosions out of the way. So yeah, not bad. What I want to do now is enable frame generation. So in order to do this, I'm just going to head into our settings, we'll go to graphics, and we're going to be using XeSS frame gen. Like I mentioned, with this new Core Ultra, we do have access to multi-frame gen, and I do believe that in the future, it will change. We'll be able to enable this directly from the game. But right now, if I go to my Intel graphics software, and we go to graphics, XeSS frame generation override. So from here, we can go 2x, 3x, 4x. Override XeSS frame generation game settings to enable 2 to 4x frame generation, supported on applications using XeLL 1.1 or higher. First test I want to run here is just application choice. So with something like Cyberpunk, it's just going to double that frame rate. So it's basically a 2x frame gen with XeSS frame generation. And I'll apply, but I'll need to restart the game real quick. Now we're back in here with XeSS frame generation turned on. Still at high settings, 1080p. And yeah, our frame rate is significantly increased here. Does feel super smooth like this, but there's a lot more that we can get out of this with XeSS multi-frame gen. And with it set up like this on, let's say, a 1080p display or a 1200p display, depending on your aspect ratio, personally, I think that this is more than enough. I mean, we're at high settings here. It looks great. We're getting an amazing frame rate out of it. But let's see what else we can do with this. I wanted to move over to the laptop screen so you can see exactly what's going on here. And right now, we're not running this at 1080p. We're not running it at 1200p. We're actually running this at 1600p. So 2560 by 1600, still at high settings, but instead of using regular XeSS frame gen, we're using XeSS multi-frame gen set to X4. And I completely understand that there's people out there that just don't like frame generation. They don't like fake frames. But we're not working with a $2,000 or $2,500 GPU here that, in order to go up to 4K, you need to use some multi-frame gen. We've got integrated graphics here. So I think a lot of people out there wouldn't mind using something like this, especially seeing the kind of performance we can get out of this new Intel Core Ultra 388H with the Arc B390 iGPU. I mean, I wouldn't mind playing it just like it is. And to tell you the truth, I don't even mind playing at 1200p on a screen like this. But being able to take it up to that 1600p mark at high settings over 120 FPS on average, it's pretty amazing on an iGPU. So far, Panther Lake is turning out to be a really powerful little chip, but it's also a very efficient chip. I did want to do some battery life testing, and this is really going to differ from device to device. But with this Lenovo laptop that I have here, again, it's a reference laptop. It's got a 99 watt hour battery. I set the screen brightness to 50% and 60 hertz. We can do up to 120 on this. Mixed use office productivity testing. So in quiet mode, 18 hours before this thing completely shut off. Balanced mode, 13 hours. And in performance mode, this thing can do up to around a 54, 55 watt TDP in performance mode. We still saw 8 hours of runtime out of this 99 watt hour battery. So this was continuous use across the board here. Really amazing battery life. And if you wanted to just do some video playback, you're probably going to see more than 18 hours. You only need to be in quiet mode there. It's pretty crazy what they've done, given that you can go from, 18 hours of office work on this thing up to running Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440p over 100 FPS. So first impressions here, I think that Intel has done a really good job with their new 18A architecture. Power efficiency here is really great. And of course, when it's time to get more performance out of it, you can take that TDP up and really let it stretch its legs, especially on that Arc B390 iGPU. So far, really impressed with the performance and power efficiency of Panther Lake. I've got an X7 CPU that I'll be doing a video on soon, but I really want to get in here and do some lower TDP game testing with this new chipset. Intel did come out and announce that they will be creating a Panther Lake line specifically for handhelds. This could really give us a good idea of what we're going to see out of those, and I do think we'll see some awesome performance and battery life with those chips. So if you're interested in seeing some lower TDP testing, some higher TDP testing with more games on Panther Lake, make sure you hit that like button and think about subscribing so you know when I post the next one. And if you're interested in learning more about Intel Core Ultra 300, I'll leave some links in the description. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. And like always, thanks for watching.